Okay, so this is a piece of research that I've just been involved in the tail end of it whilst working in the Macintosh Environmental Architecture Research Unit in the Macintosh School of Architecture at Glasgow School of Art. And that's a research unit that's led by Tim Sharp. This research was done in 2012. So this is the outline of my presentation. I shall very briefly introduce give a bit of background on the project, and I shall very briefly also skip through the methodology, and then I'll outline the key findings and then finish up with an overview of the main points there and some conclusions. So there's a growing body of evidence from hospital and work environments on the health benefits of daylight or sunlight, but there's very little research from the housing environment. And that's really important because there's, over the last century or so, there's been several trends in architecture which has led to there being less daylight indoors. So as well as us spending all our time indoors, we've been designing buildings on the whole which let in less natural light. For example, currently the drive for energy efficiency is reducing window sizes. Besides the solar houses, this is more like volume build type housing. We no longer build tenement flats with tall ceilings. And also in the 60s, there was a lapse in the usage of the British Standard Code of Practice on sunlight accessibility in domestic dwellings. So this study was a small pilot study, only 40 participants. It focused on social housing in a disadvantaged area of Glasgow, Pollokshaws, and four tower blocks in particular was where this study was carried out. And as well as looking at the connection between, or looking for a link between mental health and accessibility of sunlight indoors, we also tried to look at the fundamental mechanisms behind that, and in particular the sanitizing effect of UV light, and also looked at sleep quality, as that is known to be important for mental health. So the survey was done in October 2012. 40 participants were recruited to the study, 24 male, 16 female, 21 to 70 years old. The key health measures, which were self-report measures, were mental well-being, measured using WEMWBS, the Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale, GHQ 12, General Health Questionnaire 12, that's psychological distress. Physical activity and sleep quality were two other key measures that were included. The survey also assessed environmental conditions such as subjective lighting or the atmosphere inside the flat, cleanliness, and also demographics. So the sunlight modelling was carried out using IES virtual environment, and it was done for theoretical clear sky conditions for the entire year. So it's a very simple model with very crude sunlight accessibility metrics, because we don't have these kind of conditions in Glasgow all that often. So it's quite a simple model. The metrics that were defined were sunlight aperture opportunity, which was the total area of window receiving direct solar radiation over the course of a year, and sunlight surface opportunity, which was the cumulative total internal surface area lit by sunlight each hour over the course of the year. And the SSO metric was also modelled with occlusion from curtains and blinds at the time of survey taken into account. And these metrics were modelled for the living room and kitchen of the flat, for the whole day, and also for the period 9 to 6 p.m, which was considered a typical up and about time for the participants of the study. We did some microbial sampling, specifically bacteria and fungi in the air of the kitchen and living room, and also the living room carpet, and also dust mites in the living room carpet. Some air quality monitoring was done also, but I don't have time to get into that today. So the analysis that I've done, I looked at relationships between variables for the sample as a whole and also two subgroups. Individuals who were spending more than 2 hours a day in their living room between the hours of 9 and 6, and then individuals who spent less than 2 hours. And I also looked at trends in the key outcome variables across aspect of the main living room window. And because of the particular configuration for the sample we have, there was an increasing gradient in sunlight aperture opportunity across aspects north, east, west, and south. Okay, I forgot to start my timer, so somebody has to keep me in check. So there was a positive association between mental well-being and living room sunlight surface opportunity with occlusion from blinds taken into account. And it was a borderline significant predictor of mental well-being. Mental well-being was also positively associated with living room carpet bacteria, borderline significant. And that was a positive association, so not really what we were expecting to find if the sunlight was a main factor in this sanitizing effect, because what we have here then is higher levels of bacteria being associated with higher mental well-being. For the subsample of individuals who were spending more time in the living room, there was a stronger relationship between mental well-being and the sunlight surface opportunity. And the sunlight surface opportunity was able to account for about 40% of the variance in mental well-being, or 36% if adjusted for a population sample. For the subgroup who were not spending the time in the living room, there was no significant associations with the sunlight metrics or any of the environmental variables. There was no significant trend across the aspect of the living room main window. For the psychological distress variable, there was no association with any sunlight metrics for the sample as a whole or any of the subgroups. But there was an inverse association with the living room carpet bacteria, and that was able to account for about 10% of the variance in psychological distress when once accounted for a population sample. And so that was following the pattern as found for mental well-being. The two were consistent. Again, the bacteria levels were higher, and there was better, where bacteria levels were higher, people had better mental health. There was no significant trend with psychological distress across aspects of the main living room window. And for bacteria and the sunlight metrics, there was no association or trend with aspects. However, there was some borderline significant trends, correlations for the subgroups. Kitchen air bacteria and kitchen sunlight surface opportunity, and the living room air bacteria and kitchen sunlight surface opportunity. However, on the other hand, there was also borderline significant associations between the air bacteria and level of occlusion. So there's not really a clear picture there for a bactericidal effect of sunlight. And the same pattern was there for the subgroup who spent less than 2 hours in their living room. So sleep quality was not found to be associated with mental health for either of the measures used. However, it was associated with the modelled sunlight aperture opportunity and also the sunlight surface opportunity. And there was an inverse association with the carpet bacteria. So people with more bacteria were sleeping less. There was not a significant trend in sleep quality across aspects of the main window, but median sleep quality did increase across that particular aspect. So in quite clear way. So perhaps for a larger sample that would have been significant. Okay, so what can we say from all this? This is a small sample using very simple modelling of sunlight accessibility, but the results do indicate a link between mental health and sunlight accessibility in the home. Also, they're suggesting a link between sleep quality and sunlight accessibility. There's no clear indication of a bactericidal effect from sunlight, so that would suggest it's not a primary mechanism here. Perhaps our modelling, our metrics are too crude, or perhaps it's the Glasgow climate, it's just not sunny enough. But also it could be that cleaning and ventilation habits are more important, or at least they are in October when this study was carried out. It could be that there is a depletion of good bacteria in the environment, and that is leading to poorer mental health. And likewise, with ventilation habits, could also be depleting good bacteria in the environments which we need for our health. So to conclude, access to sunlight indoors is likely to be a factor influencing psychological health of residents of social housing in Glasgow, especially for those who spend most of their time at home. And further research on sunlight accessibility and health in the context of housing is warranted. Okay, thank you.